All right, this is going to be interesting because I'm not being marginalized. I'm kind of putting myself out there that Draymond Green is the Warriors' tough guy. Dylan Brooks, to me, is the Grizzlies' tough guy. And both guys play on the edge. And when Draymond did his tackle thing, I think there's a very alpha quality to Dylan Brooks who said, all right, I slept on it. I'm gonna make a little message in the first couple minutes. Because that thing happened right out of the gate. The first chance Dylan Brooks had to make a statement, which is take a shot at one of our guys, I'm going to take a shot at one of yours. Now, I don't like the result. I'm not a fan of that. So let's bring in Ryan Russillo, podcast at The Ringer. Very good. We've been quoting him for the last week on stuff. Okay, so I'm just going to give you the floor because I do like my basketball players to have physicality. I like Draymond. How does this land for you? Size it up for me.
You like Draymond? Wow,
I love Draymond.
I was not expecting that curveball. All right, here's the deal. I thought this was really interesting because it just played out that way. You know how life works. I had Gary Payton Sr. on the podcast yesterday, and he was talking about his son because, you know, it was part of the interview. And he said, I will point this out, though. Goes, if he dunked on my team and did that scratch the head thing, which dudes are doing now to kind of show up the other guy, he goes, I would break his back. He said that about his son on the podcast, even though clearly he loves his son. I don't know if that was part of this. I don't know if there was some intent on some carryover on getting back at Peyton. Maybe it's to your point that Draymond was really physical. It was a dirty play, though. Okay,
yes,
the wind up, the intent. I mean, the way he winds up is so specific where it's not really going for the ball and somebody's in the air. And that's why Kerr was so upset, because it is kind of understood. When you do that, when you see guys get really mad when they're hit, there's a different level of ending up on the ground, but being hit in midair because you just have no control of your body.
All right. That is interesting. So Gary Payton Sr. said if Gary Payton Jr. taunted him with that stuff. Well, you know, I was talking about this in baseball. And you see this all the time in baseball. You hit my guy, I hit yours. And we ask these athletes, I mean, they're 25-year-old kids full of testosterone and alpha. And, you know, I mean, part of it is, let's be honest, you and I both like UFC. A lot of it is gamesmanship. A lot of it is, you're not going to intimidate me in my space. And I do think, Ryan, that Memphis is the youngest team. And I think they're defending sort of their space. Like, okay, you guys are the old brother. We're not letting you push us around. I really do think Memphis thinks about that. And I kind of find myself going, even though I don't think they're going to win the series, I kind of like the attitude. Is that reasonable?
It's totally reasonable. Look, every single team that wants to try to win a title, you need one guy that's wired a little differently. I mean, it's why Matt Barnes was in the league for as long as he was. He also developed into a decent shooter, too. Like, if you were putting together a roster and you had completely passive personalities throughout, but were the most talented team, I think you would see the front office go, we need somebody that the other team's a little scared of.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like that hockey enforcers thing. And I also think the way we've talked about sports, because we've been so concerned with injuries, that we've gotten away from, you know, this is still a very testosterone-driven event, whether you're watching hockey, football, or basketball. In football, what do we say? Like, hey, match their physicality, hit them in the mouth, see who responds. You know, once you start getting beat up, how do you respond? Are you motivated by the pain, or does the pain make you shut down? And now we're talking bigger picture stuff here. But in the case of basketball, we've talked about this all the time where, oh, they didn't respond. They weren't physical enough. And those are things that we don't like in sports. So I don't like this play. I agree with Kerr. I think it's dirty, but I understand it.
So, you know, you were one of the only people in the history of the state of Massachusetts. You and I had this discussion 10 years ago where,
I can't wait for
where
this.
You wouldn't drink all the Belichick Kool-Aid, and you said he's a bad drafter. And one of the things that I've said, you can't transfer genius. That's why Elon Musk doesn't have a lot of proteges, and Steve Jobs didn't, and Stephen Hawking didn't. They're just geniuses. You don't run into a bunch of engineers going, yeah, I learned everything from Elon Musk. He functions intellectually in a different space. Belichick doesn't have a coaching tree because his mom spoke 7 languages. Some of Bill's brilliance is not transferable. Phil Jackson, I think, is really smart. He has no coaching tree. Steve Kerr had as much Popovich as him. Why? Because a lot of Phil is just not transferable. He and Belichick are really heady, well-read, bright, and they don't have a coaching tree. And so I move into this point. The Lakers are now leaning on Phil Jackson for who's our next coach. And my thing is, Phil is a great coach, but Belichick can't draft. Phil's no expert on what makes a great coach. None of his coaches were hits. I don't know if I would lean on him for the coach. Am I wrong?
Well, I could poke holes in it, right? I could poke holes in it and say, well, wait a minute. The whole reason Vogel was there because Phil Jackson told Jeannie Buss to hire Vogel, and Vogel was a good coach. The idea that this is somehow Vogel's fault this past season, you knew when they put together this roster, you're like, it's going to take 2 to 3 months to even figure out a rotation, and then finally you're going to tell the 3 guys that have a resume, hey, you're not playing. Like the whole thing, even though I thought they'd be better than this if everybody had been healthy, Vogel is a really good coach, and he resurrected the perception of him post Orlando, because at that time you're like, is this guy even going to get another gig? And he admitted all the things that he needed to do different. So Phil, that's actually to me a win. But then the way it works out here is that, all right, well, we have to fire him because you don't know what to do with the rest of the players. Maybe Phil is good in a part-time situation, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Phil can be an asset. It's not like he doesn't understand basketball all of a sudden. I think the knocks on him with the Knicks regime is that it was a job he kept telling the bosses he didn't want. And they finally offered him so much money, he had to say yes. And that wouldn't be, if I owned an organization, I wouldn't want to have to bribe the most important employee to actually take the job. So day to day, no. Long term, hang out, let's grab a sandwich. What do you think? I think Phil can still do some of those things, but I think that the Lakers, as we know, this is not something where they like handing the reins over to people, right? Like even if Clutch has had a lot of input, they didn't have final say during the trade deadline. A lot of people debate like, what is Pelinka's role? Like, is he allowed to do whatever he wants? What's Jeannie's role? Everybody hated the brother, but everybody loves her, and now the team's a mess again. So I'm not going to sit here and like go eye roll up in arms. Oh my gosh, Phil Jackson is the worst thing ever, because it actually led to the Vogel hire. But I just don't think I'd want him full time with benefits.
All right, so I love the Phoenix Suns. I love their construct. I like how they play. I like that they're not anti-analytics, but very pro mid-range. I like everything about them. I just don't know if they can handle Giannis if they get to the finals and if they get past Golden State. Luka's fascinating. They couldn't find a great 2 to play with Dirk. And they've already whiffed on the Porzingis great 2 to play with Luka. Spencer Dinwiddie's more of a 3. So are they too Luka reliant, or is like this what they have to be?
It's both. They have to be this way because of the things that you just talked about, the roster around them. But they are too Luka reliant. I've gone back and I've talked about this now the last few months because it just was dawning on me. We've had an incredible run of statistical performances over a regular season, like historic stuff, right? The Westbrook season in 17, some of these Harden seasons, but I kept coming back to the point of like, these guys have the basketball more than anyone's ever had it regularly in history. So like some of the traditional stats are completely weighted when you start looking at usage. So I went through usage rates, the top 20 usage rates in NBA history. And the playoff track record is terrible for these single season players with the highest usage rates in the history of the game. And a lot of them are very recent years. The only player to ever get to a finals was Allen Iverson. And that was a pretty weak East. It wasn't exactly some great finals appearance team with the Sixers against the Lakers who lost in 5 games. The only Western Conference finals or conference finals beyond that was Harden in 18 when they missed 1 million threes, lost to the Warriors. There's all sorts of flameouts, first and second round flameouts, and teams that didn't even make the playoffs. Luka is the single highest usage player in the league. I mean, he was second behind Embiid for the regular season. He's number 1 in the playoffs. It's incredible. It's fascinating to watch in game 1. But when they don't hit threes like they didn't in that third quarter stretch, like they don't have a chance. Phoenix has all sorts of different things they can do. And so there's an amazement with Luka, but we've seen this script before. It is almost impossible to have a single usage player like this have long-term success in the playoffs.
That was very good. It was very good. See, with Russillo, you get usage rate. And I like this stuff. That Russillo gives you these things. He'd been saving that out pitch. Didn't use that on any other show, but
Didn't see it. Can I ask you a question before you, because you put me late in the block here.
I did not. This is the prime spot. This is a cleanup spot. What are you talking about? Go ahead.
Just kidding. Are you taking online courses at USC? Are you like that weird old guy that shows up to your Wednesday night class on campus? And you're like, what? Imagine being this guy. He's like 100, and he's sitting there doing rock and earth science 1. What's going on with you?
Okay, let me ask you this question. This is very absorbed by me, but let me ask you this question. Would you think less of me if I, through a couple of my businesses, paid for USC players? Would you think less of me? You're laughing, would you? Would you think I was weird?
I know you, and I consider us friends.
Yes.
So I would think it was hilarious. I don't think. But the thing is I know that you would do it only to say that you did it, just to see how mad people would get at you.
He knows
because you don't have any hobbies. You don't have any hobbies.
Come on,
And
Russillo.
that's what you would do. So I got to admit, I think I'd respect the play. Whereas if you were some guy that was pretending to be some super you know, integrity above everything else, you know, journalism, blah 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 blah, and then I found out you were like on the side paying for guys, then maybe I feel a little differently about it.
That's exactly what I told Joy.
Ryan's kind of telling on you right now, though.
No, I told Joy during the commercial break, I want to do it just to tick everybody else off in the media.
So you're telling on yourself then, yeah. Because,
but seriously, if we really... Go ahead, Joy.
People think Colin takes himself extremely seriously, and he doesn't. No, he takes the show seriously and what he does seriously.
Yeah, but
show seriously. You know,
maybe 4 of the shows each week. There's usually a 5th one in there.
He doesn't not enjoy watching people argue amongst each other about things that he's not paying attention to, and then having a cigar with, and a glass of whiskey with Ann.
All right, Russillo. I only let Russillo ask me questions. I don't like guests asking me questions. I like to.
Here's a question for Russillo. Really quickly, while we have you.
Okay.
I'm getting an honorary doctorate because I'm giving the commencement speech at Barry University at my school this Friday.
Yeah.
Is it fair to ask people to call me Dr. Taylor after the commencement speech? I
love that question. Where do you land on that?
I love it. I say yes. Because it's almost like Colin paying for USC players. It's incredibly annoying. You know it's annoying, and yet you love the reaction to it. So I'm all for it. I hope the handle has changed. I want the graphics to be different from now on, Joy.
I mean, I will get the piece of paper that says,
"Oh, I'm totally.
I have a doctorate in humanities." I think it's
Isn't
fair.
Dr. Joy better branding though?
I like Dr. Joy better. It does sound better.
No, it does way better. Colin and Dr. Joy. It makes this show sound academic.
So great.
Instead of the barnyard musical it is. All right, Russillo. Good seeing you. The Ryan Russillo podcast on The Ringer. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.